community and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. My name is Suzanne and I'm one of the volunteer coordinators at the Stroke Foundation, and I'm thrilled to host today's webinar. So I'd like to welcome our panel, and first of all I'd like to welcome Selma from the Heart Foundation, and I'd like to welcome Kellyanne, the CEO of Vic and Taz from the Heart Foundation, and Sharon from the Stroke Foundation, our CEO, and Bob, who is also from the Stroke Foundation and a volunteer. So happy National Volunteer Week to everybody that has joined us, and if you're online watching, and also if you're going to be watching the recording later. Today we'd like to talk about volunteering, and we'd like to talk about what that means for the Heart Foundation and for the Stroke Foundation. The webinar will run for around 30 minutes today. Please use your chat function if anyone would like to ask a question. At the end of the session, we'll certainly come back for some questions and answers. And also feel free to jump in at any point with conversation. So, Sharon and Cal, please tell us how long you have both been working at your organisations and how you met.
Okay, so I kick off. So I've been with the Stroke Foundation about 5.5 years. And great organisation, love my job. I'd say that a lot. And I actually met Kellyanne, I think, in my first month. So I was pretty sort of new to the whole thing, but we connected straight away. And actually we have a mutual friend, so that was an even stronger connection.
Okay.
So yeah, I think we've been kind of fairly bosom buddies since.
We have.
Lots and lots of things that we share in terms of our backgrounds and how we've arrived at our relevant positions. So it was a natural match.
Mm.
Yeah, I've been at the Heart Foundation for 12 years, so a little bit Sharon, and I came in a health role and then have moved into the CEO role, and yeah, so I think I've known, pretty much as Sharon said, I've known her for the entire time we've been at the Stroke Foundation, and as Sharon said, we kind of clicked, and we did have that background in health, which was terrific, but also I think it's been great. I think actually, Sharon, this is your first CEO role. This was my first CEO role. So I think it's really important too, and we've talked about this a lot, the importance of not only our professional engagement, but also the women who are in leadership roles help support and advise and guide and mentor each other. Yeah. So I think we work on various levels. When you say that, Sharon,
yeah,
that we work at that sort of more professional with our organisations, but we're also there to support one another and to talk through things as women in a leadership role.
And how fantastic that you hooked up in the first month.
Yes.
That's fantastic. So you've had such a long time to collaborate together, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Yeah. So we're also lucky to have Bob from the Stroke Foundation, and we would love to get to know you a little bit more. So can you tell us what your role is at the Stroke Foundation and what it means to you?
I'm a stroke ambassador, so I do talks to community groups, schools and businesses about the FAST message. And look, what it means to me is hopefully there's less silly people in the world, because when I had my stroke, I was very silly about it, and I did all the things that you could do wrong.
Okay.
And so hopefully every time I go out there and I spread that message out there, there's less people going to take the silly route that I did. And I've seen already the impact of that. There's a colleague of mine at work, and only 5 months ago he had a stroke at home. And he remembered, whilst he was having it, he remembered all the messaging that I've been doing for the last few years. He remembered the stuff from the talks, he remembered the whole FAST message, so he knew what to do, and he didn't do the silly stuff. He got it right, and so that's exactly what I'm hoping we'll keep doing.
Fantastic. And how long have you been a volunteer?
I had my stroke almost 5 years ago, so probably about 4.5 years, I think.
Wow, so not long after.
No, not long, I got straight in there.
Yeah, and approximately how many talks have you completed?
I think I've done 18.
Wow.
But I certainly know there's about another 3 or 4 on the books for the next few weeks.
Oh,
so we're straight back into it already.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And now we'd like to talk to the lovely Selma from the Heart Foundation. Now, I know that you have a very strong personal connection to the Heart Foundation.
I lost my father, who died suddenly of a heart attack when he was 59. I was still a teenager, so that impacted very greatly on me. And I reached 50 and thought, I've got to start doing something, because I started putting on weight and I wasn't doing much exercise, so I went online and I found a walking group in Melbourne, and it was a business. So I joined and I got a few friends to join, and then after a couple of years we sort of looked at each other and they said, oh, why don't we just start a walking group? You know, why do we have to pay these guys to walk around with the heart? Was the exact words.
Yeah.
So I went online, which I do because I do everything on the computer, and I found Heart Foundation Walking Group. So I started Stonnington Striders because I was living in Paran, and I'm not sure how many years that went for, maybe about 7 or 8.
Wow.
And then I moved to Elwood, and I walked around Elstonwick Park, and it's quite a few kilometres, and registered a new name, Selwood Striders, and I've got a lovely group. We meet twice a week. I looked at some of the groups, they went once a fortnight. So I thought that was not good enough. We do twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays.
And so about 11 years approximately, is that correct, that you've been volunteering?
In total,
Yeah,
yes.
and what does volunteering mean to you, to volunteer at the Heart Foundation?
Oh, it's just doing something for the community, because the group are a very high proportion of single ladies. I don't get many males, and we used to, when I first started, it was 6 a.m. and then work got less, so I made it 7 a.m. Then when I moved to Elwood, I made it 8 a.m.
Much better.
And a year ago, I made it 9 a.m. I'm hoping it doesn't get to 5 p.m.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing your story. So it's obvious today that everyone is passionate about health and well-being and the community and the organisations that they both work for and volunteer for. So now back to Sharon and Cal. So Cal, you have different goals and strategies than we do at the Stroke Foundation, but many of them cross over. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, our work aligns particularly, yes, we do. We have different missions and visions and what we're working towards. We're all part of a cardiovascular disease group, so heart and stroke, so that brings us together. But also very much our prevention work, because a lot of the risk factors for stroke and for heart are very similar. And so it's really important that organisations such as ours work together, particularly around the area of prevention, because we align very clearly. We get consistent messages more broadly out to our communities around some of those prevention messages, whether it's to do with smoking, or whether it's to do with physical activity or diet, or blood pressure, all those things that are preventive things that we can do to help us to prevent us from either having a stroke or some form of cardiac event such as a heart attack. So we come together on areas where we align and where we have common risk factors, and that also other areas might be things around where we might be providing clinical guidelines for our professional groups where there is an alignment there. So there's lots of opportunities for us to align, and for things such as what we're doing today, because we do have not only learned from each other and have that kind of connection with our work, but also the way we go about doing things, and coming together on this very important issue and things that we both celebrate is volunteering. Yeah. So that's just a few things that I can think of that we actually come together and like.
Fantastic, thank you. And over to you, Sharon. I know you work with people all across Australia. What are the challenges and benefits of collaborating?
I think if we pick up that sort of theme of prevention, we know that prevention is a really big ticket item in this country. We know that, you know, if prevention was easy, we wouldn't have an obesity problem. We wouldn't be physically inactive.
Yeah.
So it's actually a very big challenge for the country, but one that we can solve if we work together. And I think that's one of the key differences between what you see in the not-for-profit sector and in the charity sector, is organisations like us, we try not to compete at all. We try to say, what can we do together to actually maximise our impact? So we look at our missions and we say, actually, by working together, we can do more to achieve our missions.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. It's not about anything else. It's not about, you know, one outdoing the other. It's actually about driving on a mission and making sure that that remains your beacon at every point.
Yeah.
So across the country, it's about making sure that we maximise those messages around prevention. You know, how fantastic would it be if we could actually prevent 80% of strokes by actually doing more in reducing high blood pressure, keeping people physically active. So all of the same things that the Heart Foundation work on, we work on. So by working on them together and working with other organisations like Kidney Health Australia, Diabetes, you know, we can really be a much louder voice. And that's what we need. You know, we need government to really turn the health system around and say, we do more in prevention, we can actually, won't have to build so many hospitals, we won't have to invest so much in that kind of infrastructure. We can actually do more to keep people well.
Actually, Sharon, you raised a really good point about the strength of voice, and particularly another area that we come together on is advocacy. So we work together as a united voice, because government are always, you know, there's many voices out there. So the more that we can work together and have one voice, one strong voice, consistent and aligned, is actually going to help us to be able to do exactly what Sharon's saying. I mean, it's a long haul, and prevention's always been a struggle to continue to get that traction, but it helps that we all work together.
Yeah, and I think that's really reassuring for everybody that's watching today to know that you do. I think it's very old school thinking to think that, oh, we'll butt heads about this, but now you're collaborating together and actually working towards a common goal. And it's so lovely to see two professional women that work so well together and not have that competitive edge. It's really nice to see. So we're here for National Volunteer Week, and one of the themes this year is to reimagine. So if you were both given a bucket of money, a large pool of money, let's say, and you had to work on a project together, and we would like it to include volunteers, a volunteer element, what would you do?
We've been planning this one.
Very funny.
Is this dinner conversation?
Well, actually, last Friday we did have a conversation about what would this be, and I'd had an idea, and Sharon had an idea, and we came together, and it was pretty much the similar idea. But I think Sharon might have formed hers a little bit more, so I might get you to. I think what we even came up with a title, if I remember right. Didn't we call it something like Roadmap for?
Roadmap to Recovery.
Roadmap to Recovery, Roadmap for Healthy Living program or something like that. But that's what we even gave it a title.
That's very good.
So I think fundamentally it kind of centres on how do we support people to make their best recovery possible. And that's from a heart event or from a stroke. And what we hear, particularly in the stroke community, is that people, you know, have this kind of process that happens in hospital, and then they get discharged from hospital and they literally say it's like falling off a cliff. I don't know what, I mean, Bob's story is like somebody who is incredibly persistent, and, you know, it was like a terrier going after a diagnosis and making sure that he did the next thing and the next thing. That's not the case for everybody. So a lot of people find it really challenging to navigate the health system. They think that they're the only person who's had this experience. So what we've discussed is actually, you know, wouldn't it be fantastic if we had some kind of a volunteer peer support type group, individuals that could actually be that person-to-person contact, that could actually say, you're not the only person that's had this experience, you know, this is what you can expect at this point. Because there's nothing more valuable than the lived experience. And I think that's what, you know, Bob has shown through those talks that we do in the community, is by sharing a personal story of a lived experience, people actually get it. It resonates with them far more. And for people that have had a stroke, or for people that have had a heart event, It's about helping them to navigate the system, make the best of the resources that are out there, and not feel like they've fallen off a cliff and got completely lost. So if anybody's out there and wants to leave us feeling like we've got a great idea.
Yeah, so we kind of call it like a navigator role,
Yeah.
so to just really help and not have people feel alone, so that they're thinking, where do I go from here? And someone can, well, actually, I experienced that myself, or I felt that, and this is the way, the path that I travelled, and this might support you. So it was interesting that we both thought about this independently, and we came together, and pretty much we had the same idea. So there you go.
That's
How much
great.
alive is that?
That's great. And I've noticed we've got a little bit of extra time, so I'd like to ask you both, and I'm not sure who, please feel free to jump in, whoever is more comfortable, about volunteering and what it means to your organisation.
All right, well,
You start, I'll go.
yeah, I'm sure we're going to be aligned here too. Volunteering is just such a critical, important, valued part of who we are. And I think we're never going to be able to achieve our mission or our vision without volunteers. And although the Heart Foundation has always had volunteers, in our new strategy, it's called Connect, very linked to this theme, Connecting Hearts. So, part of our theme for our volunteer week is Reconnect. Connecting Hearts, a very key priority of that is really engaging our community more and looking at how we can provide more opportunities and connect more with our volunteers. So even though we have got a number of options, and we've just recently engaged volunteers in our research area, which has been fantastic. I think we've had about 100 volunteers who have been reading hundreds of proposals and research grants alongside our scientists and our sort of scientific reviewers, to really get a sense, again, people who have lived experience, people who have got some connection to the issue, to really get an understanding of the kind of research that we're supporting is actually absolutely relevant. And so that's been terrific. And of course, Selma and Walking is an office-based. We have our Supporting Young Hearts group who help us and guide us and advise us on how to provide that peer support, or how to look at what we are doing around peer support and patient support for those that are younger who have had a cardiac event. So for us, and for me, I'm a volunteer myself. I volunteer as on a small organisation that I chair, and so I think that there's such a valued, and I think it's two-way too. It's not just about what we gain, the skills, the knowledge, the experience, the passion, the guidance, the advice from volunteers, but it's also, I know that it provides a lot for the volunteers, and it absolutely provides a lot for us as well. So they're not only volunteering, doing work for us and supporting us in the community, but also they become really great friends. Really great friends and great supporters. So.
Yeah, so true. Thank you.
I'd absolutely echo that for the Stroke Foundation. Volunteers, I describe our organisation as small but mighty, and the mighty part is down to the fact that we have 275 active volunteers. People like Bob that go out into the community, that actually are our face in the community, because that's our biggest program, is our Stroke Safe Ambassador program, and without it we would not be able to get out there and tell people about prevention messages, to tell people about the emergency signs for stroke, the fast message. It's absolutely critical to us fulfilling our mission. We have 90 employees, headcount in the organisation, and 275 volunteers. So they're everything. And at every point in the organisation, from our amazing volunteers at our governance levels, on all of our committees, to all of the volunteers we have in the office. We have students and allied health students and people doing their communications degrees, and it's just been extraordinary. And what's been really lovely is seeing people who survived a stroke come in and do some volunteering and then go on to a new career pathway. I think it's been really fantastic. And then you see people like Bob, who's a volunteer, does Stroke Safe Ambassador. He's also a fundraiser for us, a marathon runner, so he's a role model. So, we have amazing volunteers, and without them, we definitely could not fulfill our mission.
Yes, very true.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important in our not-for-profit area.
Yes.
And as Sharon said, we have 1,700, I think, walk organisers. So we have a number of walk organisers across the country who are doing very similar work that Selma's doing and being, again, the eyes and ears out there in the community. So, yeah, it's fantastic.
Fantastic, both of you. Yes. All right, now I'd just like to see if we've got any questions at this point. Nothing. If you do, if anyone online or that watches the webinar afterwards has any questions, please direct them to your volunteer coordinators, Emma Short or Megan or I. I'd like to thank you all for coming today. I'd especially like to thank our 2 volunteers for coming all the way, as Bob said, for the first time into the city for some time. So we really do thank you for your time, and we do really appreciate the work, as we do with everybody online. The work that you do. Okay. And yes, thank you. Enjoy Volunteer Week. We hope you've had a fantastic week to everybody that's watching. One last thing, Emma just said, how do I become a volunteer? So if you check both websites, you will be able to see how you can become a volunteer at either the Heart Foundation or the Stroke Foundation. And we, of course, won't be fighting for your volunteer support. We work collaboratively, don't we, Emma? So it's fantastic. So once again, thanks to everybody, and thank you both ladies for coming along today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.